Tonight on the Night Team. This day marks a somber reminder for one Louisville mother. 12 years since her son was shot and killed in their home. Now, over a decade later, she's still waiting for answers.
There's no leads. It's went cold. There's nothing new.
Her pleas as she continues to wait. Plus, we now know the name of the man who opened fire inside an Elizabethtown emergency room. Police still investigating after shots rang out early in the morning. The suspect hit by an officer. And later, car enthusiasts racing legally, pushing back on Mayor Greenberg's plan to crush confiscated street racing cars.
And so they don't want to lose it, and they don't want it to be crushed.
Our focus team investigates. You're watching the WHAS11 Night Team. 12 years later, a Louisville mother is begging for answers. Her son, Brian Lewis, was killed in his home on this day back in 2012. And the family says they're still left without answers. It's our top story here on the Night Team. I'm Alex Dieterer. This afternoon, friends and family of Brian Lewis gathered for a memorial. They say there is a $10,000 reward for anyone who comes forward with details. WHAS 11 Night Team's Alexandra Goldberg and photojournalist Aspen Hester spoke with Lewis's mother tonight, who says as the years go by, it's tough to hold out hope for justice.
1, 2, 3.
But the longer it goes, the harder it gets for me.
12 years, and still no answers.
The sadness of just having to do this another year.
On the 12th anniversary of her son's death, still, Rhonda Mars says there's no signs of what happened or why 21-year-old Brian Lewis was killed in their home on October 20th, 2012.
Gave him a kiss and a hug, told him I loved him, and went on to bed.
She says at 2 o'clock in the morning, she heard the gunshots. He was shot 7 times.
By the time I got up out of the bed and into the living room, he was by the front door dead.
How do you maintain hope that you will find answers?
I've kind of lost hope. After 12 years, I ask myself every year, why do you keep doing it? Why do you keep continuing this? Why keep putting myself through it? But at the end of the day, that's all I have left.
She says she's begging for anyone to come forward with information in exchange for a $10,000 reward.
And we've had it 12 years.
Sitting in the bank?
Sitting in the bank. Yeah, just waiting for somebody to collect it.
So she can finally find closure.
I tell myself every year that this is the year.
Pam Lewis is his paternal aunt.
When you go this long and nobody can tell you anything, it's probably one of the most frustrating things that I've ever dealt with in my life.
It's a cold case.
And 12 years later, without answers, without his murderer in jail, how does it feel to potentially be walking among the suspect who murdered your son?
I get scared to go outside. For a long time, I wouldn't go outside. Over the years, I've just learned to go do what I have to do and come back home.
Yearning for answers over a decade later, the family says they want justice now. In Louisville, Alexandra Goldberg, WHAS 11 Night Team, on your side.
LMPD's cold case unit is handling the investigation. Anyone with information should call the anonymous tip line. That number here on your screen is 574-LMPD. You can also use the online portal. Also new tonight, Elizabethtown police have identified the man shot by police inside Baptist Health Hospital early yesterday morning. Police say 39-year-old George Lee Jr. remains hospitalized in critical condition. Elizabethtown officers say Lee fired shots near the emergency room of Baptist Health Hardin around 5 yesterday morning. When officers arrived to the scene, they quickly made contact with Lee before one officer fired his weapon, hitting him. No other injuries were reported during this incident. Well, we are now just 2 weeks away from Election Day, and those in Jefferson Town will be voting on who they want to represent them on their city council. Today at Bud's Tavern, 9 candidates pitched their ideas for why voters should pick them. Each candidate had 5 minutes to introduce themselves and an additional 3 minutes to describe how they would improve the city. The event was well attended, and those we spoke with tell us they want council members focused more on the next generation.
I'm not looking for someone to say what they are good at and what they've done. I want to hear, I want you to tell me what you are going to do and what your plans are.
I'm looking for somebody that's looking out for people like me who live in an apartment, who work a middle-class job and are just trying to get by.
Election Day is on November 5th. Early no excuse in-person voting here in Kentucky starts October 31st and runs through November 2nd. And nationally, the presidential candidates are hitting key battleground states hard in the run-up to the election. The vice president spent much of the day in Georgia before heading to Pennsylvania, a must-win state and where former President Trump has held several events this weekend. ABC's Allison Cossack has the details.
Former President Donald Trump taking questions from voters during a town hall in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Will you commit to helping protect Social Security and Medicare benefits?
A great question. The answer is yes. Number one, no tax on Social Security for our seniors. That's a big deal. No tax on tips.
Earlier in the day, Trump stopping at a McDonald's, working the French fry cooker, and pushing unsubstantiated claims that the vice president lied about working at the fast food chain in college.
She never worked at McDonald's. In other words, she's lying Kamala.
On Saturday, the former president ratcheting up the political discourse, using an expletive to describe his opponent.
We can't stand you, you're a vice president.
Vice President Kamala Harris reacting to Trump's vulgar comment during an MSNBC interview with Reverend Al Sharpton.
What you see in my opponent, a former president of the United States, really is, it demeans the office. And I have said, and I'm very clear about this, Donald Trump should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States.
While in Georgia, Harris addressed the congregation at the New Birth Baptist Church in Stonecrest.
Our country is at a crossroads, and where we go from here is up to us, as Americans and as people of faith.
Then headed to an event in Jonesboro where Stevie Wonder helped celebrate her 60th birthday. Happy birthday! With just 16 days until Election Day, voters are already coming out in huge numbers. In Georgia's first day of early voting, more than double the number of ballots were cast than on the same day 4 years ago. And in North Carolina, the state's Board of Elections says more than 1 million people have already cast their votes. Allison Cossack, ABC News, New York.
Early in-person voting began in North Carolina this week, while thousands of potential voters still lack power and clean running water as they head to the polls. In Asheville, it's been 3 weeks since Helene decimated remote towns throughout Appalachia and killed nearly 250 people. But despite the catastrophic damage, all but 4 of the polling places in the hardest hit areas opened Thursday. And voters took advantage, even as many wait for potable water to return and businesses to reopen.
It's hard to even really think about voting for some people because, some people, if they've lost their entire house or family members or something like that, then I'm sure voting is one of the last things on their mind.
No, I'm really devoted to cast my vote, but I think a lot of people feel that way. But obviously, anytime you have something this cataclysmic, it's going to disrupt people's lives.
And as many continue to wait for basic necessities right here in Kentuckiana, many organizations are continuing to send help. Over in Bullitt County, emergency services are hosting their own drive to gather supplies for those impacted by both Helene and Milton. I spoke with Kentucky organizers and a Louisvillian still dealing with the aftermath at her Florida home, and I heard from them why it's so important to continue sending resources. Hundreds of miles away, hurricane victims continue recovery efforts, picking up their lives after 2 hurricanes made landfall just days apart from one another.
If this was our community and we was impacted that bad as Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton took place, we would be wanting help as well.
Bullitt County Emergency Services knows the recovery efforts don't stop once the hurricane leaves land. First responders are holding a hurricane collection drive, doing their part even from states away.
We are in the first responder emergency services business for a reason. Even though we are helping outside of our community, we still serve our community day in and day out. But let's take it to the next level. Let's try to help those that are still in need.
Helping those like Louisville native Karen Cumbest, who has been cleaning up her home in Englewood, Florida since Hurricane Helene swept through, followed closely by Milton.
We had 44.5 inches of water. We originally thought it was just surge.
She shared these photos from outside her home where you can see the piles of damaged and ruined furniture and home appliances.
So the washing machine, the refrigerator that's on the first floor, some furniture, because again, we're still rebuilding from Hurricane Ian. I mean, everything is just gone.
The recovery for hurricane victims in Florida, Tennessee, and the Carolinas is expected to take years or even a decade.
When the impact happens, so many people want to help then and there, but what happens 2 to 3 weeks down the road? What happens to a month down the road when resources are still needed? So that's what this project is basically about, is making sure that those remember that they are not forgotten about.
Kentuckians banding together to show once again that support from the bluegrass knows no bounds.
Don't lose hope. People out here are still remembering you.
Bullitt County Emergency Services is collecting things like gas cans, hot hands, brooms, and flashlights. They'll be collecting donations through October 28th, so if you'd like to donate, you can drop off your items at your local firehouse.